Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca and welcome to my YouTube channel, Rebecca's Wild Side. I've been knitting for a whole year, well, almost. I started knitting quite literally on the 1st of January 2023. I should clarify that I did know how to do a knit stitch and a purl stitch before this, but I had no idea how to increase or decrease or do any of those fun things that you need to do to create something wearable. I know there's a lot of videos out there showing everything that people knit in 2023. This video won't be one of those, mainly because I don't have everything I knit in 2023. A lot of things I knit in 2023 didn't turn out as expected, aka I felted them. I still do that to this day. It happened just last week. I almost ruined a newly finished jumper. But in today's video, I'm going to be talking about most of the things I made. I'm going to be showing you plenty of things that I have made in my first year, and talking about mistakes I've made, things I wish I knew, and what I plan to take with me into 2024. And yeah, some of the things I haven't attempted in my first year of knitting. And yeah, just basically a roundup of 50 weeks of knitting. So as I mentioned, I don't have all my pieces here, and also I should mention that I did do several gift knits in my first year, throughout the year, not just at Christmas time. So there are plenty of things that I might touch on that I don't have to show you. I'm going to try and do this video chronologically, so I will start with how I got into knitting. I did crochet over the past few years and was starting to venture into watching crafters on YouTube, and I noticed this time last year that there were so many creators posting their what I made in 2022 videos. I got hooked on this. They led into the knitting category of these videos, and yeah, that's where it started. I started watching all these amazing things that these makers had made, and I was like, I want to make that, because I wasn't making garments with my crochet. I'd attempted a couple, but they didn't have the shape and the fit that I wanted, and I wanted something really tight knit and not as see-through as crochet, so I decided I was going to learn. One of the creators I found was Handmade by Florence. Florence Miller. I have been watching her for a year now and I love her videos, but one of the first videos I came across, other than her talking about her creations over the year, I found a jumper tutorial video. It was a simple raglan and it was really clear, really straightforward. She laid out the materials I would need. I also liked the fact that she was an English creator, because it meant I know I'd be able to get hold of those materials relatively easily. So I thought it was a really great place to start, and I became hooked. I ordered my materials straight away. She uses Drops Nepal for that jumper, and I got online, ordered myself some of that, and got stuck in. I've shown my first ever jumper on this channel before. I should clarify that I finished the jumper. I cropped it because I wasn't mentally at a point where I was able to sustain knitting a full-length garment. It's something that's become easier over the year, but at the start I was a little bit hasty to finish the garment. But yes, I finished it cropped. It fit quite lovely. I didn't do a gauge swatch, even though there were very clear instructions in the videos to do a gauge swatch, but that is something that I still struggle with sometimes. And it did come out a little bit large, but I didn't care because I created a jumper. Interestingly, when I tried it on, the Drops Nepal, I found it very itchy, which was really interesting. It was my first time as well creating anything really out of 100% a natural fibre, or wool. I'd made cotton pieces before in crochet, but I usually would just use acrylic blends, but this was part wool, part alpaca, and I did find it really, really itchy. And I thought, oh, well, it will soften up in the wash, because that's what I'd heard and I'd definitely seen in all the videos I'd been researching. But what I did do with this item was I did throw it in the washing machine, and it did felt and shrink. Surprisingly, I can still get it on. So here it is. I also did a twisted, so I followed the video, and there were different options in the video to do different collars. There was an option to do short rows or not do short rows. I tried to make it as complex as possible because I was confident in the actual knit stitch. So I did I don't even think it was, I think it was a standard collar, but I chose to do a twisted rib collar. I'd obviously done some research before doing it. I decided to do the folded collar and the short rows. It did felt quite a lot. I think it's really clear here. I have got quite a thick wool dress underneath, so it's quite tight, but it would be tight anyway because it's felted. So the sleeves obviously shrunk. They were not full length before I put it in the washing machine. They are certainly not full length now, so they're kind of a 3/4 length. It's rather tight, but I am surprised I can still get it on. I don't wear this. Yeah, it's not as itchy as it was before I went in the washing machine, which is a good start. But yeah, this is when I learned that wool does not go in the washing machine. And I will clarify at this point, I did not know the difference between superwash and non-superwash. I didn't really even understand different types of fibers. So to me, this is a wool alpaca blend. I knew it had wool, I knew it had alpaca. I didn't know what those two things meant or how they acted. I'm still learning very much how different fibers act. I remember thinking that merino wool was an expensive fiber, but that it would be very soft. I knew that just from some past experience, I think as a child. This is an Aran weight. I think I actually knit it half a size down, and I also used this project to learn how to knit continentally. So I grew up learning an English knitting style and also English purling style. At this point I was still purling English style, and part of this was knit English knit, part of this was knit continentally, so I was learning. So there were differences in my gauge throughout this project. But first project, I was super thrilled with myself. I finished something even though I ruined it. I was ready to move on to the next one, and it didn't cost me very much because it was knit up in drops. So yeah, I found Florence's video super straightforward, really clear, really aesthetically pleasing. It's like a really aesthetically pleasing video. And yeah, first object. So that would have been finished in January. I think it took me about 3 weeks to create. And then I remember learning how to read a pattern, because that was a video tutorial. It did come with a pattern. I began to learn how to read patterns. And it was at this point that I discovered Petite Knit and My Favourite Things knitwear. Two very well-known designers in the knitting world. Throughout February and March, I remember not a lot. I'm trying to remember what I made during this time. I did find the Oslo hat pattern, and I did attempt it with some hand-dyed yarn. I don't have much memory because I don't use Ravelry, or I wasn't keeping any notes at that time. I really don't know what came next in my knitting journey, but soon after, I know, did come the hand-dyed Oslo hat. So I do have here the first Oslo hat I created. Ow, my elbow. So this is the Petite Knit Oslo hat. I own the standard Oslo hat pattern. I don't own the mohair edition pattern, but I have made these using mohair because there is almost no difference in the pattern. I definitely recommend looking at both of them and probably going with the one that has the more sizes, because I know one of them has a lot more sizes, so it gives you more size options, especially if you're off gauge. That's helpful. So this is knit up, holding 2 strands of hand-dyed yarn from Yarnside Hand-Dyed Yarn Company. Nancy is on Etsy. All the details will be below. She creates really lovely hand-dyed yarns, inspired by nature, literature, and art. The colour scheme is not my personal choice. There is no mohair held in this. It's almost, well, it's 100% merino, but it does feel quite cottony. I didn't felt it, so that's a really good start. This is really interesting because I was learning about pooling at the time. As you can see, it's some colours pooled here, and even holding 2 strands together, I found really interesting. One thing I found with this pattern that I have created several of these since, and I always try to keep in mind, is that the band really needs to be much longer than you think, because it stretches out, and also as it double folds, obviously it halves, but it comes up really small. And I will say, I finished an Oslo hat yesterday, and I thought I made the double band so large, so long, and I knit it together and I folded it, and it still isn't long enough for my liking. So I'm still learning these things, obviously. So that is my second Oslo hat. Then around April time, my partner and we took a trip to Copenhagen. My second piece I decided to make was also going to be a garment for my other half. I decided to try the Norland sweater by Petite Knit. This would have been my second Petite Knit pattern. I did purchase the champagne cardigan before this. I tried knitting it up, but I couldn't get gauge, and I struggled a few times with it. So I decided to move on and make a unisex, or for my partner, a men's jumper. But this is Knitting Drops. I'm trying to find it's got short rows. This is Knitting Drops Air. It is 90% completely to pattern. The only thing is I ran out of yarn, so it's got a very thin collar, which my partner doesn't like. One day I might think about redoing this, but there's going to be dye lot complications and things like that. I'm going to try it on for you because I actually tried it on not that long ago and I really liked it on myself, even though it is very oversized. As you can see, the neckline is really low on me. But it's quite a nice oversized garment on me. My partner doesn't wear it as much as I think, one, he would like to, but two, you know, the collar does affect him. And I do agree, I think this is quite a feminine neckline. Maybe I'll just take this for myself. I am working on another jumper for him, but yeah, it's knit up in Drops Air, which is a super, super nice yarn. It is only 1 strand from what I can tell. And it's the Northland sweater by Petite Knit, followed pretty much to pattern. I, at this point in my knitting journey, had learned how to do a tubular bind off. So I did it here, and I also did it here. That was super exciting. I really quite liked it with this yarn, although the sewing through the ends is quite difficult. This was a bit of a slog because it's such a large garment. But yeah, it was really cool to create him something. So I finished this around April time, which was quite late in the year. We had a pretty rubbish summer this year. But there were warmer days, and I think he felt like he didn't have any opportunity to wear it really, because I finished this going into spring and summer. But yeah, I really love this actually. I forgot how much I like this yarn. And this pattern, I have created this pattern, I've used this pattern several times. I've actually knit 3 garments using it, 2 of them are heavily modified. But it's actually a really solid pattern, and it has, I think I've learnt now, it's a contiguous construction where you knit a panel and then kind of raglan out. Anyway, I like it more than I thought actually, now I'm looking at it. So far I had only felted my first object. I then decided to knit up a second Northland sweater for myself, but make it really chunky, so it was going to be very off gauge. I knit it up. I'd knit it up in 1 strand of brushed alpaca silk from Drops and 2 strands of like a DK weight merino from Lang. Yeah, I really liked this. I can't really remember much about it. All I remember is I put it in the washing machine and it felted. And this time it felted into like a really tiny, really heavy, because it was such a thick knit, it became a really heavy thing about that big. At this point, I decided I wanted to discover different yarn, and I thought the best place for that would be Copenhagen. I have loads of family who live in Copenhagen. So Ed and I visited Copenhagen just for the day because it actually worked out so cheap, the flights, that it was cheaper for Ed and I to fly over to Copenhagen, buy the yarn over there and then fly back the same day. So we did that, and I got so many exciting things. I got a huge jumper quantity of Knitting for Olive, which I'm working on at the moment if you've seen my recent podcasts. I found a really cool hand-dyed skein in a discount bucket from Hedgehog Fibres, which I'd heard of at that point. I knew it was a good hand-dyed yarn company, and I decided to make another Oslo hat. No! I lied. This hand-dyed yarn isn't from Hedgehog Fibres, but I did get another hand-dyed skein from Hedgehog Fibres, so I'll go into that in a minute. But no, this was a hand-dyed skein from a Scandinavian company that I can't remember the name. But I held it with a beautiful Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. It's quite like drapey, like it doesn't sit as thick as the other one. This was also gifted to my partner because I let him pick the hand-dyed skein for this one because first of all, the orange isn't his colour either, and I wasn't happy with the width of the band. So I had him pick this out in Copenhagen. As you can see, it's an improvement on the last one. But there are still issues with this band size, but it's better, I'm getting there. I didn't use anywhere near 100 grams for this project. I think I probably used about 70 grams of hand-dyed yarn. These are all knit on about 3.5mm needles, and he does wear this. I have a photo of him wearing this, so there you go. As I just mentioned, I picked up a discounted skein of hand-dyed yarn from Hedgehog Fibres, and out of that I held it with a white mohair. I've spoken about these on the channel before. And I don't think I could find the gloves, so I found them now, right in time for when it gets chilly. And this is them. And yeah, I just knit this self-drafted mitten. Oh, they're so nice. I'm looking at them like, I need to make another one of these. I really enjoy knitting mittens. It's ironic because I hate knitting socks. That is something I have learned over the past year. I will go into detail a little bit when I talk about the socks that I've made. But yeah, I made these little mittens, and I was heavily inspired by a project, so I won't take full credit. But they've got this really cute pearl. And what else did I pick up in Copenhagen? I picked up the Knitting for Olive jumper quantity. And when I remember picking up that quantity of yarn and thinking it was the most luxurious yarn I'd ever seen. And then I will be completely honest, when I've been working with it recently, I haven't been like blown away compared to some of the cheaper yarns that I've been using. So I know that's probably a bit of a hot take, because I don't know if that's the right word. Unpopular opinion, that's the one I was looking for. Because I know people bow down to Knitting for Olive. And I think it is reasonably affordable, but to me it's definitely a more luxurious yarn. But I wasn't totally sold. I'm trying to work out what came next. Yes, okay, so I also picked up a bunch of Sunday in a sage green colour and a mohair from Knitting for Olive. And I remember finding a similar mohair to go with the Sunday from Isaga, but I really didn't like it, so I decided to hold the Knitting for Olive one with it, and it was much better in my opinion. Now, this is a pattern I had bought a few months before. It's the balloon pullover by Petite Knit, but I decided to make it without the balloon sleeves. This was my first drop shoulder jumper, which is mad to think that I'd been knitting for several months and I'd just been doing raglans, all that contiguous sleeve that I discussed. This is my sage green dropped shoulder with my very short, stubby, like sewn on sleeves, or picked up sleeves, because they're picked up. Now, there are certain things about this jumper I love, and there are certain things I'm really not a big fan of. I've discussed, like, the drop shoulder just doesn't feel comfortable on me. On this jumper, I'm going to try another drop shoulder soon. I'm really desperate to try one because I really want it to work. Something like the Louvre sweater, I think is really beautiful, and I'll have to look into others, but I know that I really want to try it again. I'm thinking of making a drop shoulder for Ed, for my partner. I have some yarn coming in for that soon. This is my first time knitting a full pullover with mohair, or a full garment with mohair, not just an accessory. So I didn't really know what was going to happen with gauge, with the finished material. It was a little bit looser than I had hoped. This was fun. Again, I did a twisted rib on this, and by the looks of it, I just did a standard cast off for this. So I was really into how the twisted rib looked at this point. Obviously, this would have been finished around July, August. Yeah, I didn't felt it. This video should be called All the Items I Didn't Felt in 2023. On purpose. I'm gonna get to that. I know I said this wasn't going to be a what I made in 2023 video. I am just honestly just trying to go through all the pieces I made in my first year. I will get on to more discoveries that I made and things I wish I knew, or things I wish I'd known. So we are right in the peak of summer now. Oh, I do have this somewhere. Don't know when it was, but this was about when Camisole number 9 was released. I decided to make it, so I ordered 3 skeins or 3 balls of merino, because I think it's knit in merino, by Knitting for Olive in a bright blue colour, and I attempted to make the Camisole number 9. I was off gauge, it was huge. I ended up elasticating the waistband, and it's nice, it's cool. I did wear it a couple of times over the summer. It's not something I'd feel comfortable wearing out in public. I think under something it could look quite good, like under a jacket, or even with a suit, it might work, but I did make that, and that was my only real summer knit because I wasn't feeling it. I don't know, I think when it comes to summer knitting and negative ease and zero ease, gauge is a massive factor, and I wasn't able to understand gauge or make gauge, or I also didn't have many tiny needles. I think my smallest needle at that point was like a 3.5mm needle. So next summer we'll see how that goes. I'm sure I'll talk about that next year. But I did decide to heavily modify the Northland sweater pattern and create this. This is a cropped jumper knit in Drops Air in their new colour last year, which was called Sweet Orchid. It looks really funny with what I'm wearing underneath, so just try and ignore that. So this is a Northland jumper modified to have a short sleeve. So I was really proud of this because it was the first time that I modified heavily a pattern, and the outcome was something I would wear in public. As I said, I probably finished this towards the end of summer and it was starting to get, it was still very hot, so I didn't get to wear it as much as I'd like, but I'm hoping in the spring this could be a real transitional piece, because although it is wool and alpaca, it is also cooler. Coming up to the final few pieces I've knit recently, I have spoken about most of these in my podcast. I do have one new piece that I'll give you a sneak peek of, which you won't be seeing in full until the next podcast. Towards the end of summer, Petite Knit released the Poppy Tee. I decided to make a version of the Poppy Tee with long sleeves. So all I did was, I didn't do any decreases really at all in this sleeve. I just did the Poppy Tee and continued knitting the sleeves until they were long enough. This is a beautiful pattern that I need to make more of because I love the shoulder construction. Again, it's that contiguous sort of shoulder construction. This is completely off gauge. This is knit in Drops Baby Merino and Drops Kid Silk Mohair, which is a really, really nice, not collaboration, a nice, I can't think of the word, my mind's gone blank, but they pair together really well. I find that Drops Baby Merino and Kid Silk Mohair colour matches really well in a lot of them. And also, I find that the stitch definition is so, like, equal. I don't have much rowing out at all, even in the short rows. And then I have just finished this sleeve with my favourite pearl, knit pearl, knit pearl. And it's kind of got a slight bell sleeve to it. This item does have a folded neckline. It has just a 1x1 rib, no twisted rib. At this point, I was still toying with, did I prefer twisted rib or 1x1 rib collars? I have come to a decision now that I prefer the 1x1 rib. I think it looks a lot neater, though the twisted rib has its moments. Yeah, I'm obsessed with this. This gets worn a lot. I didn't realise, this just shows me how many petite knit patterns I knit this year. I really didn't knit much else. I did knit a pair of the Petal Drop socks by Florence Miller, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Her name is Handmade by Florence. I did gift those to my mum, so you can't see them, but they were the first pair of socks, full pair of socks that I finished, and I actually flew through them. They're a lace pattern, and they are beautiful. So I do really want to knit, I've got mohair in my mouth. I do really want to knit another pair of those. Petite Knit then released the Celeste pullover. This is her first colour work. Her first colour work pattern. And I really wanted to push myself at this point. I had learned Italian bind off and was getting a bit bored of full stockinette knits. So I decided I would try a colour work, and this was ideal because it's like you only use 2 colours at one time, so I could hold one English style, one continental. It has this really beautiful long collar, which is a 1x1 rib, which I was starting to really enjoy, and because the collar's, I actually don't know that, I want to say the collar's picked up later, but actually it looks like, no. I think this was cast on using a German twisted cast on, which is a pretty tubular cast on. Don't take my word for that, but it looks really well finished. This is knit in Drops Lima, which is their DK weight kind of standard yarn, and it's very similar to Peer Gynt, which the original pattern is knit up in. This was my first circular yoke. The ends are knit off in a full tubular bind off. Excuse the knot there, it's there, I can't get rid of it. There's that one. And I knit the sleeves really long, and I love this, and I'm making another one for my mum soon, and if she doesn't want it, I'm gonna keep it for myself again. This is the first time that I knit short rows after the colour work section. So yeah, as I said with those last two pieces, you had already seen them in my podcast, the last 3 or 4 pieces actually, I think. So my most recent garment cast off was the Clint Classic pullover by Anna Wenzel. I'm not going to show you this on because I'm going to save it for my next podcast, but it is an all over. It's very bright in here. So that is an all over broken rib stitch pullover. This one does have a twisted rib collar. As I said, I don't think that's my fan. Now, I don't think I'm a fan of that. If you are eagle-eyed, you will have seen something a little bit funny about this pullover. This pullover is half felted. So I did my classic. I didn't put it in the washing machine, this one. I washed it in a bucket. And then because it was so thick, it was taking so long to dry. So I put it in the tumble dryer for like 10 minutes. And I checked on it after about 3 or 4 minutes. And it was like looking fine. So I was like, oh, I'll just leave it another few minutes, try and like wring some of that water out. And literally after 10 minutes, I picked it out and it was like almost felted. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've just put weeks of work into this garment. It's my first textured garment. Like, I was so excited. Everything about it, like the sleeves get really small at the end and it has a massive chunky hem that kind of like cinches in at the waist. And I tried it on, and although it was damp still and it was warm and felted, it was perfect. I was so relieved. I can't even explain. You can see it so clearly. The one thing I did worry about, you can see it so clearly here. It doesn't help that it's a cream jumper, but it is fully felted on the cuffs. Thank God I can get my hand out and it sits perfectly. But I was really worried about this yarn being really a loose knit and being really see-through. That is not the case now because it's fully felted. So I'm really excited to talk about that in extreme detail in the next podcast. Final 3 things I'm going to talk about this really quickly. This is an Oslo hat I made for my brother in some leftover yarn. Again, this time I actually sewed the fold down. I don't know why. The rim's not long enough. I knew that was going to be an issue because I was running low on yarn for this, but it's kind of cute. And he probably won't wear it, but he can enjoy it. Another one, so this is my first weekend hat by Petite Knit. I'd done the Oslo hat a few times and really wanted to try the weekend hat. And this time I was not going to let the brim be too thin. So I gave it a huge chunky brim. This is perfect. It's probably like a tiny bit tight, but I know that will stretch with time. I haven't blocked this yet either, so I know it's going to grow massively. But I actually like wearing it unblocked right now. This could be the one going forward for me. I made this balaclava, which was self-drafted because at this point I was starting to experiment. I'm coming up to the end of my first year of knitting. I really wanted to experiment on what I could make. This I call my bug hood. Oh, I can't even get it on that way. Excuse, because it literally is, oh my God. It's horrendous. But it's kind of cute. It's super warm. If there's a blizzard, I'm not getting frostbite on my ears, or my nose, or my chin for that matter. Bug hood. But, oh, I got mohair in my eye. But I may have messed up on that balaclava, but it actually made me really appreciate balaclavas and really wanting one or a hood. So recently, did I bring it upstairs? I recently finished the Harris hood as well, which I didn't bring upstairs, so I'm not going to show you, but it's beautiful. It's knit in brushed alpaca silk and Lima, drops Lima, all drops. Yeah, here's a photo of it. I'll share photos with you. This is beautiful. I'm finally, like, I'm starting to understand gauge. I'm starting to use gauge. I'm starting to calculate that if it's off gauge, how I can, you know, size up, size down. starting to learn a little bit about it. So those are all of the objects that I'm going to show you for the past year. There were others, and this video is probably going to get very long already. There is no cardigan in that little preview there. I did not make a cardigan this year, and I will not, because I have one on the needles, but it's only in its very early stages. So that will be my 2024 early 2024 spring project, is finishing a cardigan. I found that purling, you know, it took me a long time to appreciate it and learn it, and also as of about halfway through last year I learnt the Norwegian purl, which means I can hold the yarn in my left hand, similar to a continental. That sped up my purling a lot. My gauge has got really good with my purling now, so I can match my purl and my knit gauge. That's something I had to learn. And that is one of the things I didn't make last year, a cardigan. A lot of knitting flat. I didn't make a seamed project either. Again, a lot of knitting flat that didn't attract me. No scarves. I haven't got the patience to knit a scarf yet, but I'm tempted maybe in the spring to knit a Sophie shawl or a Sophie scarf. Should probably start with a Sophie scarf because they're very small. But yeah. Mittens, not a lot of socks. I knitted quite a few singular socks. I think sock knitting is a really interesting thing. I think you either love it or you hate it. I am not a lover right now. I'd love to become a sock lover, but I might try a DK weight pair of socks. Not many chunky knits. I am working on a big chunky knit men's turtleneck at the moment. So that's going to be really exciting. Moving on to, I'll try and run through it as quickly as possible, but kind of how I learnt garments, other than following a lot of YouTube tutorials. Anytime there was something I didn't understand in the pattern, I Googled it, or I YouTubed it, mainly because I'm a visual learner. And yeah, one of the biggest things for me was learning yarn weights. Still to this day, I forget the difference between like a DK and a worsted, or a fingering and a sport. Like I have to try and remember 4-ply, 5-ply, all of that. And then I'm still, to this day, understanding how a yarn is plied. I think I'm finally getting to grips with it now, but it's something I just haven't had much interest in learning about or making the effort. I haven't made the effort to learn about it. So that'll be a goal for next year, to understand how yarn is spun, kind of solidify those different weights in my head. Different fibres, alpaca, yak, silk, merino, superwash, non-superwash. Still very much learning about that, but I have a good idea. You know that alpaca is very warm, and merino has memory and breathability, more breathability than other yarns and things like that. So that's something that I'm still learning, but it was something I had no idea about. If you are right at the beginning of your knitting journey and you don't understand these things, don't worry. A lot of YouTubers just rattle off being like, yeah, this is knitting this with this and that, and it's okay if you don't know what they're talking about. I promise it will get easier and it will become more natural. I bought myself a really nice thing to learn how to take gauge. For me, I have blocking mats now. I have blocking mats and pins. I still have never pinned out a wet garment and blocked it correctly. I have learned not to put things in the... I really don't want to put things in the washing machine. This is just, I don't know, it just must be my red flag, like my kryptonite is the washing machine. I have not purposefully made a felted garment. That will be something on the list for next year. I will be doing a video on my plans for 2024. I'd love to do a felted garment. Yeah, they're the mistakes I've made mainly. The washing machine, the not gauge swatching, once an item's been blocked. A lot of my finished objects end up larger than I intend them to be because they grow in blocking. Oh, I've got mohair in my eye and contact lenses. Oh no, I haven't got my contact lenses in. Oh, it's really painful. Opinions that I have after a whole year of knitting. I love mohair. Not when it's in my eye, but I do love, there we go, got it. I do love knitting with mohair. I really enjoy knitting with brushed alpaca silk as well, which is a drops yarn, but that kind of heavy mohair fluffy feel, I love fluff. So that is something I've learnt in my first year, but just as much as I love a really smooth DK weight without a mohair, I'm really loving knitting with Drops Lima, which is just a DK weight, part alpaca, part wool, but it's a very smooth yarn. I love colour work. That's another thing I've learned. I know that's something that's quite, what's the word? Controversial. Some people love it, some people hate it. I really enjoy stranded colour work. I think that's the colour work that I've been doing. I love it even more if it only involves 2 yarns per row. A couple of like test pieces that I knitted were barreling out because my colour work knitting was much larger than, or is it the other way around? No, my colour work knitting was much tighter than my single colour knitting. I really enjoy looking at hand-dyed yarns. I enjoy small things with hand-dyed yarns. This speckled striped one is so beautiful. Love that. I'm not a sock knitter, definitely something I've learnt. Sleeve Island is a thing. I do get stranded on Sleeve Island regularly. I love modifying patterns. That's another thing that's become really clear to me. And I love the fact that I am able to modify patterns and I'm creative in the fact that I can add sleeves, I can remove sleeves, I can do a large collar, I can do a small collar. I can kind of see the vision. I'm, you know, very proud of myself for doing that and will definitely be doing more of that in the future. I personally feel as if I have had enough of stockinette for now. I knit plenty of stockinette projects this year. Really, I'm gonna move slightly on now to my things I really want to do next year. As I mentioned, I'll have a whole video on this, but I am craving a cabled jumper. I know how to do cables because I have done them. I have tested, I've done like samples of cables before. Cables are something I really want to do, full cabled jumper. I enjoy cables, that's where I was going with that. I'd like to knit a blanket. You know, I've done no research into patterns and that's very much what my other video will be on. I will have patterns linked to the other one. Yeah, I think a blanket would be nice. I just have to get over that mental idea of knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting for like so long and just creating a blanket. I don't know. I have no interest in learning brioche right now. It's not something that's grabbed my attention. I'm not really attracted to how it looks, like enough to learn it. And I'd like to work with more yarns and definitely explore some other designers. Yes, there are other designers I will be knitting in 2024. I really hope this video isn't too long, but I think that's all I wanted to say. I wish I'd started documenting my year of knitting earlier. I wish I'd gotten into YouTube earlier, but I wasn't confident enough. I wasn't creating objects that I was proud of right at the start. So it wasn't something I felt comfortable doing, but now I'm at that point and I'm really enjoying making these videos, and so many of you come back week after week and that makes me really happy. I'm starting to feel like I've got a little family and a little following, and that's really sweet. And I just love sharing my projects with you. So my first year of knitting has been a whirlwind. I've absolutely fallen in love with it. I have my beautiful knitting space now, or my crafting space in general. And I know that it's something that I will take with me through the rest of my life for years and years. And I'm looking forward to, in the future, having new relations to knit for, new friends to knit for, and just sharing my hobby with everyone. We are very much at the end of the video now, but I thought I would share with you very quickly my plans, not my full plans, but just an idea of a video schedule which I have come up with. So I hope to post a video every week now. I posted around every 3 weeks, just a podcast episode. But now I hope to post a video every week, and there will be kind of 3 different types of videos. I will be posting a podcast every 3 weeks. My second type of video will be a knit and chat or a chat with you, much like this video was today. I'm going to be calling this a knit and chat, even though I wasn't knitting. I was a little bit nervous, so I didn't feel as if I could do two things at once. But in the future, when I'm chatting largely with you, I hope to be knitting. And then the third type of video will be classed as a project vlog or a knitting vlog. So I will involve clips from my week of knitting, my week of non-knitting, traveling, but it will always be centered around my creations. So that is kind of the third video, kind of a miscellaneous video, the third week. So yeah, that'll be hopefully my new upload schedule. Let's hope I can keep up with it. I would also love to hear what you have achieved this year. Yes, in your knitting. I'd love to know, are you a new knitter? Are you a veteran knitter? Let me know what your biggest accomplishment was this year. And if you want to share with me a personal accomplishment as well, something that has nothing to do with knitting, you are more than welcome, and I love reading your comments. If you want to see more videos from me, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a like as well. I will see you all next week. I am spending Christmas in Paris and the New Year in Spain, so I'll be sharing all those things with you. I'll be taking my camera with me, I'll be taking a lot of my knitting projects with me, and I will see you then. Bye guys.